Creating graphs in Illustrator. So a graph basically is a diagram of data that shows relationship among a set of numbers. So we'll be able to show complex data in a simple way, communicate a message effectively, and the cool thing in Illustrator is that we can convert one type of graph into another. So in Illustrator, if we look at the tools that we have available here, and I'm going to go ahead and tear off this panel. Remember at the very end here I have a separate little tiny triangle and it's called the tear off area of my tool. So now I have my hidden tools all visible at one time. So the 9 types of graphs, I have a column graph and allow my tooltip to show the name. The second is the stacked column. We have a bar graph tool, a stacked bar graph tool. We have a line graph tool. We have an area graph tool. We have a scatter graph tool, a pie graph, and a radar graph. So some of these, of course, are going to be more popular than others. We're going to start with just our typical column graph tool. So when I have that tool selected, I need to go out into the artboard and click. When I click, I'm able to enter in my dimensions. Let's go with something like a 6 by 4. And I'll click OK. So what I then see is basically my graph data window. And what we see are the individual cells here that I will enter in my raw data. Now a cell is just the intersection of a row and column. So the very first thing you need to do is actually delete that 1.00 that you see in the top left. Not sure why this happens, why Illustrator does it, but you do not want that there. So I'm just going to press my delete key and delete that cell. So that's the number one thing. The second thing to think about is that if you're entering in labels that have numbers, say like 2015, you need to place that in quotes so that Illustrator realizes that that is a label rather than a data or something to be charted. Now to move from cell to cell, I press my tab key. I can also navigate using my arrow keys on my keyboard, or if I press enter, it will navigate directly down in a column. So many ways that we can navigate without actually using our mouse and clicking. So what I'm going to do is enter in some information here. So across the top is going to be my legend labels, and my category labels are going to be along the vertical left side. So what's the difference between those two? The legend labels are basically for the numeric data that may change, and the category labels, which would be over here on this first column, are for my non-numeric data. So I'm going to go ahead and enter in, say, months. We're going to put some information on temperature. So I'm going to type in March, and you see I'll type it in at the top, and the minute I navigate down to another cell, it's going to apply it. So we'll do April, and we'll do May. Okay, and so I'm actually using my arrow keys. I could be pressing enter or return to do the same thing. Now again, I just used my arrow keys and navigated back up to the top where we're going to put our legend labels. So you may want to think about how long these end up being. We're going to do quite long and see how that turns out. So I have average low, average high, and I'm pressing tab, my tab key now. To navigate from cell to cell. So we have record high and we're going to do record low. Oops. So then once I'm ready, then I just need to check mark to click apply. Guess what I forgot? My information. So I need to enter in my information here. So we're going to do the average, low, and high in Minnesota. So the average low in March is 23, and you can see how it enters it in as decimals. Don't worry about that. That's not a big deal. All right, and now I press tab. I'm going to use my arrow keys now to navigate to April's temperatures, and we have 36, 57 for the average high, the record high in Minnesota. Minneapolis in April was 95, and low record is 2. And let's go to May. We've got 48 for the average low, 70 for the average high, 106 was the record, and 18 the record low. All right, so now let's try this again. Click apply. So here we see what's happening here. We have our months, and you can see that actually my negative number went below. And we have what's called a legend over here. And so that gives me information on what each one of these categories, what each one of these are. So this is a good start. It's not exactly where I want the finished product to be, but it's an excellent start to begin creating a graph.